All-out attack. Ukrainian troops destroy hundreds of Russian tanks in revenge mission. The Ukrainian army's counteroffensive around the city of Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine starting on September 6 destroyed half of the best tank division in the best tank army in the Russian armed forces. 100 wrecked or captured tanks in 100 furious hours. That's how much destruction the Ukrainians inflicted on the Russian 4th Guards Tank Division, part of the elite 1st Guards Tank Army, the Russian Army's best armor formation. Now the 1st GTA is retreating north in order to preserve what remains of its frontline divisions. But the damage the tank army has suffered could have lasting implications, and not just for Russia's 200-day-old wider war in Ukraine. The 1st GTA had been one of the most prestigious of Russia's armies, allocated for the defense of Moscow, and intended to lead counterattacks in the case of a war with NATO, the UK Defense Ministry explained. It will likely take years for Russia to rebuild this capability. The 1st GTA has been in the fight since the start. When Russia widened its war in Ukraine on February 24th, it initially aimed to capture Kyiv and unseat the Ukrainian government. The 1st GTA led the assault on the capital city and also led the retreat a month later after the Ukrainians won the battle for Kyiv. The survivors of the 1st GTA, in particular, 2 regiments of the 4th GTD, as well as 2 regiments of the 2nd Guards Motor Rifle Division redeployed to the front around Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, just 25 miles from the Russian border in northeastern Ukraine. Five months later, the 1st GTA regiment still hadn't made good all their losses. The 1st GTA suffered heavy casualties in the initial phase of the invasion and had not been fully reconstituted prior to the Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kharkiv, the UK Defense Ministry stated. And some 1st GTA elements, apparently including the 147th Artillery Regiment, later shifted to southern Ukraine in a desperate bid to blunt a Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kherson Oblast that kicked off on August 30th. Damaged, divided, demoralized, cut off from reliable logistics owing to Ukrainian deep strikes on Russian supply lines and lacking effective air support, the 4th GTD and 2nd GMRD were no match for the Ukrainian dozen Ukrainian brigades, including the powerful 4th Tank Brigade that attacked north, east, and south of Kharkiv last week. The Ukrainian 4th Tank Brigade's T-72s and T-64s hit the Russian 4th GTD hard outside the city of Izium. By the time the Russian division retreated north toward the Russian border on or around September 10th, it had lost around 90 T-80U tanks that independent analysts can confirm. That's half the tanks the division would possess at full strength. The Ukrainians captured many of the T-80s intact and could fix them up, paint them with the Ukrainian Army's cross insignia, and send them back into battle. The 4th GTD and 2nd GMRD, and by extension the whole 1st GTA, probably are unfit for further fighting. They could reconstitute, but with what and whom? The Kremlin's urgent recruitment drive is faltering. And having written off more than 1,000 tanks in Ukraine, the Russians might need years to bring depleted units back up to full strength. The Ukrainian army, by contrast, has more tanks now than it did before the current counteroffensives, as it has captured more Russian tanks than it has lost tanks of its own. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military has captured over 200 Russian vehicles in a more than week-long offensive that has seen the war-torn country reconquer most of Kharkiv Oblast, a Ukrainian military official told Foreign Policy. The harvest of Russian armor is something that Ukraine now plans to use against the flagging Russian military. As Russian forces surrendered more than 2,300 square miles to advancing Ukrainian troops in a little over a week, more ground than Russia has taken in the last 5 months of fighting. Some troops running for their lives left vast stashes of Soviet-era weaponry, which the defending Ukrainians can now operate, including at least 17 vehicles on Monday alone. Open-source tracker Oryx found that the captured Russian equipment varied from BMP-2 amphibious infantry fighting vehicles to scores of tanks, including T-80 variant tanks that date back to the 1980s, which experts pegged at about half of the combat-ready inventory. With poorly trained Russian units, some cobbled together from Russia's National Guard and police forces, falling away from the front lines, Ukrainian forces stumbled upon an embarrassment of riches on the battlefield. They just left their tanks, artillery, special equipment, a lot of armor, and were just trying to save their lives, a Ukrainian military official told Foreign Policy, speaking on condition of anonymity to provide an update on ongoing military operations. They will be used against Russia. But even with formidable U.S. and European military aid that made the Kharkiv assault possible, including multiple rocket launch systems and artillery, Ukraine is doubling down on its calls for more weapons in an effort to liberate as much Russian-occupied territory as possible before winter sets in. The U.S. didn't start their Lend-Lease program, but instead of the U.S., the Russian government started a Lend-Lease program for Ukrainian forces, the official added, referring to the World War II-era program to provide U.S. allies with food, oil, and material that has been revived for Ukraine. The losses of equipment, vehicles, and troops from the Ukrainian surge in the last week have also left some Russian units in tatters. Britain's defense ministry reported on Tuesday that the 1st Guards Tank Army, one of Moscow's most prestigious military units, tasked with guarding the Russian capital or leading counterattacks in a possible war against the NATO alliance, was withdrawn from Kharkiv in a severely degraded state. It will likely take years for Russia to rebuild this capability, the ministry assessed.